Brace yourselves, this one's gonna be a doozy. Ys 1 came out in 1987 for the PC 8801, 9801, FM7, and MSX2, all of these being various Japanese computer models. A year later, in 1988, it was released on the NES and Sega Mark III. In 1989, it was finally brought over to the West for IBM and Apple computers. And Ys 2, being the sequel, came out a year later, so take most of what I just told you and move it up roughly a year for all of Ys 2's releases. From this point onward, Ys 1 and 2 would typically be bundled together as one game and treated as such. This started with Ys Book 1 and 2, which came out in 1989 for the TurboGrafx CD, or just PC Engine as it was called in Japan. This version was released in the West a year later in 1990. In 1991, the game was released on the X68000. Both of these that I just mentioned are consoles, by the way, not computers. A Sega Saturn version was made in 1997. Ys 1 and 2 were then remade. Provided my research doesn't fail me, there are minimal differences between the subsequent versions of these games from their remakes onward, outside of things like character artwork, difficulty, the styling of the user interface, and soundtrack. Visually and mechanically, they're pretty similar from here on. It came out on Windows in 1998 under the title Ys Eternal Story. Another version, known as Ys 1 and 2 Complete, came out for Windows in 2001, most likely just containing the differences I mentioned a second ago, but otherwise basically the same game. Moving on. Yes, we're still not done here. Holy shit. It got a PS2 version in 2003. In 2007, it was released for the Virtual Console on the Wii, and the Wii version got localized a year later in 2008. A DS version was made in that same year, and then it got localized a year later in 2009. In 2009, once again, that same year, a PSP version known as Ys 1 and 2 Chronicles came out in Japan, and the West received that 2 years later in 2011. Ys 1 and 2 Chronicles was then released on Windows a few months following the PSP release, and I'm pretty sure this is the current one that you can get on Steam and I think GOG as well. Out of all the versions of this game floating around, this one's probably going to be the easiest to find. That version was localized and brought to the West in 2013. Chronicles also got a mobile version in 2015, iOS and Android, and there is a Switch version that just came out in 2024, but keep in mind that the Switch version is a port of the PC 8801 game and not the remake. Whew, okay, it's over. I told you it was going to be a doozy. The game starts on an island called Asteria. The main protagonist, Adol, was sailing over there to investigate a mysterious storm wall that was surrounding the island. He shipwrecks onto the shore, and that won't be the last time that's happening, by the way. Just saying. Adol wakes up in a town called Minia. Apparently, the place is also overrun with monsters and demons, which appeared at the same time the storm wall did, and Adol agrees to help the island's militia investigate the problem. The gameplay is pretty damn simple. The combat is commonly referred to as the bump system, and that's because you perform attacks by literally bumping into the enemies. There are some things you need to keep in mind, however. If you have a head-on collision with an enemy, you'll both take damage. Attacking from the target's sides, or especially the rear, will cause you to do more damage and you won't get hurt, so that's the ideal way to take out enemies. It's also a very short game. Both 1 and 2 are about 5 hours long each if we're just talking about the story. Well, to be fair, that's if you know what you're doing. This game, especially being a really old game, does not hold your hand when it comes to directions, so it's very easy to get lost and you have to sort of feel your way around before you can progress. So actually, it took me around double that time for Ys 1 and probably like 15 or so hours for Ys 2 because I kept getting lost, but that's kind of just something that happens in older games like this. It is what it is. By the way, before I continue, spoiler warning for the rest of the game's story. If you're still here, I'm assuming you've either played already or you don't care. So let's continue. During Adol's investigation, he runs into a girl named Rhea. Remember her because she's kind of important. And she's searching for her silver harmonica. It got stolen. As a matter of fact, if you know, you know. Anyway, there's been a lot of silver being stolen lately, and every theft is linked to a man in a black cape. A little later, Adol meets a fortune teller named Sarah. Ooh. No, not you. Sarah tells Adol that she had a vision where a man who conveniently fits his description would play a key role in saving the island. Sarah tells him about the 6 books of Ys, roll credits, who hail from a kingdom going by the same name. The kingdom was actually part of the island 700 years ago, but then it vanished. The books will explain the history of Ys and how to solve the current issue, so Adol is tasked with going to a nearby shrine to collect the first book. While he's inside the shrine, he meets a girl named Fina who's being held prisoner in there. Remember her because she's kind of important. Adol rescues her, makes his way back to the surface, don't forget to collect your very important Steam achievement, and drops Fina off at Jiba's house, who's Sarah's aunt, and then he goes back into the shrine to retrieve the first book. Unfortunately, Fina has amnesia, so she can't really help us get a better idea of what's going on. The only thing she remembers is that a man in a black cape is the one responsible for locking her up in there in the first place. Adol goes back to Minia, but finds out that someone killed Sarah while he was gone. RIP. Take a wild guess who killed her and what color his cape was. However, Sarah had left a messenger to give Adol the second book. Now Adol has 2 of the 6 books. He goes into a mine shortly afterwards to recover book 3. Back at Jiba's house, it turns out that she's a descendant of one of the priests of Ys. Say that 10 times fast. Priest Tova. So she's able to understand the writing in the book and translate for Adol. Ys was known for its production of Claria, a special metal. It's basically just magic silver, if you were wondering. One day a legion of demons invaded and backed everyone into the Temple of Solomon, or Temple of Salmon, depending on which version of the game you were playing and how they did the translation. And then that's when the kingdom fell. Now, 2 other noteworthy things happened during this time. 1, the 2 goddesses of the kingdom suddenly vanished during all the commotion. Remember them because they're kind of important. And 2, 6 priests each created a book and enchanted them so that they could help guide a hero to save the fallen kingdom later down the line. These were the 6 books of Ys that Adol is currently in the process of collecting. The surviving residents of Ys then buried all of their remaining supply of Claria, suspecting that that's what attracted all the demons over there to begin with. Jiba finishes reading and then tells Adol the remaining 3 books are in the Tower of Dharm, colloquially referred to as the Devil's Tower. This is the final dungeon of the game and it's pretty lengthy, though not unbearably so. Adol is given permission to enter the tower, and along the way he runs into his best friend Dogi, another recurring character in the series. Dogi had come in a bit earlier to help the local bandit group clear out some of the monsters. You could say he's like the evolved form of Lloyd. Lloyd gets over barriers, but Dogi just punches through solid brick walls and keeps it moving. Adol runs into a couple prisoners that he frees as he's headed up, and each of them will usually give you an item to help you progress through the tower since it's full of traps and puzzles and such. One of the prisoners being a man named Luta Gemma, who's another descendant of one of the 6 priests of Ys, who was also named Gemma. Adol also finds 2 more books on the way up, bringing the count to 5. 1 left. Adol runs into Rhea, and if you're wondering how the hell she got in there, she purposefully let herself get captured so she could meet back up with him. I guess the Kingdom of Ys never stuck around long enough to invent same-day delivery. Anyway, she gives Adol a magic monocle, which allows him to read the books of Ys on his own without needing a translator. Adol makes it to the top of the tower and comes face to face with the final boss, Dark Fact, a powerful sorcerer, and oh, hey, look what color his cape is. I wonder who was responsible for all the bullshit up to this point. Dark Fact, funnily enough, is also a descendant of one of the 6 priests who was also named Fact, and he holds the 6th book. Dark Fact actually tells Adol that him climbing the tower was a part of his plan because now, if he kills Adol and takes the other 5 books, he'll be able to travel to the land of Ys, which I didn't mention this before. Ys is currently floating in the sky above the rest of the island. Like, there's just a hole where Ys should be. But anyway, the 6 books together will allow Fact to travel there and obtain a great power located somewhere in the kingdom, though the game doesn't go into specifics on what that actually is. The 2 fight, and I'm not gonna lie, this boss was bullshit. Fuck this guy. First of all, before the fight even begins, make sure you have the silver weapons and armor equipped. It's only the 2nd strongest set in the game, but he resists literally everything else, including the strongest set, which is probably what you had equipped by the time you got up there. So make sure you switch it out before you enter the room. Fact sort of just slides around the map. A lot of my audience said he resembles a screensaver, which I can kinda see. There's fireballs everywhere that'll home in on you, and when they land, they'll disperse into smaller laser bolts. You can't dodge all of them, so best case scenario, your HP will get chipped down over time, which kinda puts you on an artificial time limit when you really think about it. Oh, speaking of which, to up the ante even more, every time you do hit fact, he'll blow up the spot on the floor he was just hovering over. So on top of everything else, you're also running out of space as you deal more damage. It's pretty common to end up stranding yourself on an island and then the lasers just finish you up because you have nowhere else to run. I'm ashamed to admit this, it took me around 4 hours and a little over 200 attempts to take him out. After Adol defeats him, he recovers Book 6 and then gets blinded by a flash of light. And that's where Ys 1 ends. And Ys 2 begins. Falcom was right to eventually just package these games together and just treat them like one game. Adol wakes up and he's now in the land of Ys. He's greeted by a girl named Lilia, who I promptly proceed to ignore because she doesn't have blue hair. Only in Japanese games. Adol wakes up in Lilia's home, and Lilia's mom asks him to pass a letter on to the village doctor, Dr. Flare. It turns out the demons appeared on the island several months ago, which resulted in them having to close off the nearby mine. Speaking of which, the doctor isn't at his clinic, and Adol soon learns that he's trapped in the same mine. But before going in, the village elder also informs Adol that near the mine is the Sanctuary of Toll, which has 6 statues corresponding to each book of Ys. If Adol returns each book to its respective statue, he'll learn his true purpose on the island. Adol rescues Dr. Flare, who was in the mine looking for ingredients to cure Lilia, who was sick at the time. Sometime after, he learns his first spell, a fireball. This is pretty much the only new mechanic that's introduced between the first game and the second one. You'll need fireballs for most of the bosses in this game since they're usually immune to physical attacks. There's other magic in the game as well, most of which are more so MacGuffins than actual spells, but yeah. The fireball is going to be one of 2 combat related spells that you're going to get throughout the game. They usually come in the form of rods that you have to equip, and then you'll be able to use that spell once it's equipped. The other magical abilities include what's basically a nightlight for dark areas, the ability to fast travel, freezing time so you can get free hits on enemies. You'll also get an item that lets you turn into a Rue, which is this rodent-looking creature that, in terms of gameplay, actually serves as a disguise. It'll allow Adol to sneak past places that he otherwise couldn't as a human. It also lets you talk to the enemy demons as if they were NPCs, which is actually pretty cool since it allows you to get their take on current events. So for example, you could turn into a Rue and go talk to a nearby demon, and the demon could be saying, "Man, I'm standing guard here looking for a guy with red hair. If I don't find him, Lord Dallas, who I will mention later, is gonna kill me." Or, "Hey, I just saw this creature flying this girl over to the nearby temple. I think they're gonna do a ritual or something. I don't know, man. I just work here." You know, really funny stuff like that, but it can also drop hints with regards to what you need to do next as well. Adol finds the herbs that Dr. Flare needs to make the medicine. He makes it, and Lilia is cured shortly afterwards. As you're doing all of this, you're progressively being given info pertaining to the fall of Ys, or maybe Rise, depending on how technical you want to be about it. When Adol returns all 6 books to the statues, it's revealed that the appearance of the demons is a side effect of magic existing. The master of the demons resides in Solomon's Shrine. Sorry. That place still gives me PTSD. It's where the goddesses and priests of Ys used to reside, and that was kind of like the last line of defense when the demons had first invaded. Adol is tasked with finding the missing goddesses and defeating the source of evil inside the shrine to bring peace back to the world again. Adol starts making his way over to the shrine, needing to pass through the Glacier of Nolchia and the moat of Burnbless along the way. As he's going through Burnbless, he encounters the colony of lava. Long story short, Adol figures out that he can't proceed until he rescues the Bridgekeeper's son, Tarf. So he does that whilst being aided by Keith, a nice demon, and then proceeds onwards. He finally makes it to Ramia, the village right next to the Solomon Shrine. He's told that recently demons have been abducting the villagers to use as human sacrifices. With that knowledge in mind, Adol begins to make his way through the shrine. And I just want to say, before moving forward, fuck this place. This right here is the true final boss of Ys 2. It took me hours upon hours to navigate through this place, constantly going in circles because everywhere looks the fucking same. It doesn't help that you do have to actually go out and then back in again a few times during the story. At one point I did try looking up a map of the place, and once I saw just how big the entire area was, I just closed the tab because that shit was giving me a splitting headache. You know what they say, ignorance is bliss. There is some silver lining though. First of all, since you'll be in here for so long, you'll catch up if you're underleveled and be more than ready for the impending bosses leading up to the game's conclusion. Second, The songs that play for the majority of your time here, Palace of Salmon, Subterranean Canal, and as you approach the end, Battleground. All of these are really good tracks that will help you not rage quit the game. Actually, the entire soundtrack is pretty damn amazing. I don't think I ever mentioned that before, so yeah, I'm saying it now. Those three that I just mentioned are definitely among some of my favorites though. Adol finds some of the kidnapped villagers. One of them was Lilia, who had left home because she was told through a dream that she needed to go help Adol with his quest. That's Kat, by the way. She probably just wanted to make sure that Adol actually came back with the milk and never forgot about her. As you could probably guess, I didn't pay much attention to her during my playthrough, and it still haunts me to this day. Anyway, a dark mage known as Dallas shows up. He's been watching over Adol from the start of the game, and as a matter of fact, I hadn't mentioned this, but they had met before, and Dallas had cursed Adol earlier in the shrine, which forced him to leave the shrine to search for a cure. Dallas tries to further hinder Adol's progress by turning all of his captives into stone. Adol finds an item to reverse the petrification, and after saving the captives, he runs into Dallas again, and this time Adol does defeat him. By the way, since Dallas is a wizard, magic doesn't work on him, which makes him one of 2 bosses that you have to use physical attacks to beat, if my memory serves me right. Adol ventures deeper in, meeting a lot of old friends from both games along the way, and just like last time, some do give him items to help him out. Adol comes across the 2 goddesses he's been hearing about and they look familiar, don't they? I told you they were important. With the help of some of the villagers, specifically the ones he met in East 1, Adol is able to break the seal and Fina and Rhea are freed. Both of them basically go over the whole backstory with regards to the land of Ys. I went over some of it a while ago, but some additional details. The source of all magic is this item called the Black Pearl. As I had said, the existence of magic did create demons as a side effect. The goddesses sealed it away along with the Claria metal as well, since that could actually enhance already existing magic. The 2 goddesses then went to Asteria and remained there, going into a slumber. Some people on Asteria accidentally mined the Claria, mistaking it for silver. This allowed Darkfact from the first game to break the Black Pearl seal, and then Ys 1 happened. Fina and Rhea don't have enough power to seal the demons away again, so they have to rely on Adol, who himself is being supported by the priest descendants and the 2 goddesses themselves. The Black Pearl reveals its true form, the 2 fight, and Adol emerges victorious. This boss is actually pretty easy. Didn't hold a candle to Darkfact, thankfully. If you could navigate through Solomon's Shrine, then this shouldn't give you too much trouble. And once again, if I remember correctly, this is the only other boss in 2 besides Dallas that you have to beat the old-fashioned way, with physical attacks. The Black Pearl being stopped wipes every demon off of both islands. If you're wondering what happened to Keith, who I briefly mentioned before, he was formerly human and was turned into a demon due to being cursed. He's reverted back to his original self now. After that, everyone says their goodbyes. Ys is going to descend back into the center of Asteria, making the island whole again, and Fina and Rhea are going back to sleep, to watch over the island and make sure demons don't come back. This also sets the precedent for Adol's tendency to pull girls during his adventures and never see them again. 1, 2, and 3. 2 very short but still substantial games. I also like how a lot of the charm wasn't lost on the remakes. I still felt like I was playing something from the late 80s in spite of everything. If you have any interest in JRPGs at all, then this is definitely a piece of history that you don't want to skip out on. Outside of that, Ys 6 review will be coming soon. Numerically, it is the 6th game, but it's the 3rd game that I played because I'm actually going in order of quality of life as opposed to numerical order. A lot of the games, namely the older ones, have gotten, their share of remasters and remakes and stuff like that. So I'm going in the order that gives me the least amount of jank, if that makes sense. Anyway, that marks the end of this video. Leave a like if you enjoyed it, sub to the channel if you haven't already. A huge special thanks to all channel members for your continued support. I really appreciate it, and I will see you all again very soon.